Hey guys, Brox here. It is that time of year again, and I wish I was joking. If, a couple years ago we would say it's that new quarter for a new season every 3 months, but with how ARPGs have been going lately with their development cycles, we can say that it's that time of year again because it's been a year since last Epoch has released their 1.0, and we are moving on to what they are calling Season 2 now at their 1.2 launch. As you guys know, last season or when they launched, I created a Bleed Minion Forgeguard build, and obviously a lot is changing with last Epoch, so I started playing with the new patch as the new planners have been updated on last Epoch tools, coming up with a new idea, and I think I found what I'm going to be league starting and playing through this season. I kind of knew up front that this is where I was going to lean. I know in my previous video I had mentioned that I would probably be league starting the minion build irregardless, and I probably still am. I'm probably going to play the bleed minion build up until I get the pieces of gear that this requires to work. But these are really easy to acquire pieces, so getting them is not going to be that difficult. And then getting the build online is just going to be, a factor of finding all the different components and pieces just to make it do more damage and be more proficient. With that said, this is going to be a longer video, so as always, if you want to watch in 1.5 or 1.75 speed, you should be able to hear me just fine. There's just a lot to go through because this is very intricate. Another notation I will put out there is we don't know a lot about what this is all going to feel like once we get in game. As anybody who's played last Epoch for many years knows, we don't know what bugs are going to be present with how much they're changing. We don't know what skills are or are not going to work properly. We don't know what is going to happen. So much is changing in last Epoch that once we get into the actual game, will this even function? Who knows? Will it overfunction? Who knows? Will someone be like, oh my god, your build is bugged and that's why it's good? Who knows, right? We don't know. But this is on paper what I think is going to be extremely strong and probably easily capable of getting to corruption 300, I hope, but I wanted to kind of go over it. The other thing is as I was going through this and playing with the different components of this doesn't really take advantage of any of the new systems, so you're not required to interact with a lot of the systems to get this build online. We're not doing any set item crafting. We're not doing any idol crafting. There are few idols that we'll be, messing with, but it's nothing that is, requiring a ton of the extra systems. So I want to talk about it. This is going to be a Void Forgeguard shield throw smiter, and there's a lot of interactions here, so I'm going to go through it and kind of cover everything as to why I'm doing certain things a certain way, why I'm putting certain things where, and I'm going to try my best to even remember all the different intricate pieces that add damage to the build, because on paper it doesn't look like a lot of damage, but there's a lot of damage coming from all over the place. So from the top, the big component here is going to be Stygian's Reprisal. This shield used to just be, a level 35 shield that you could use if you wanted to, but we're not actually going to use it for what it's designed for. So we're not going to use the damage reflected to attackers. None of that matters on this shield. We really are using it for the +3 levels to shield throw and then the retaliation on block. You'll notice we have a lot of block chance off to the side. We actually have way more block chance than that, and I'll go over that in just a second. But we are using it for the extra levels, and we're using it for the retaliate. Now, a big component that is happening this new season with last Epoch is you can now choose a affix when you do the slams on legendaries that will always slam onto the legendary. This makes achieving 100% block chance incredibly easy now on a lot of different shields, because you can actually get a T7 block chance and guarantee slam it onto the shield, and that is a huge win for making even more defensive builds. So in this case, we can actually guarantee slam a T7 block chance onto this shield if we get a T7 roll. Obviously, we'd be aiming for the 26%, and we can guarantee slam that onto the shield. And then we want to try to get a reduced damage taken on block for even more mitigation. That way, every time we block, we get an additional 10% mitigation on top of our block mitigation, as well as our armor mitigation, and so many other things. There's so much mitigation in this build as well. We have close close. So you see 2,772 HP down there on the side. We actually have about 40,000 effective HP. It's an insanely defensive build, but also potentially really good damage. So this is going to be our kind of base shield, and then you're going to probably have a question mark in your head right now. You're probably going, wait a second, how are you holding Dreamthorn with a shield? Well, part of the changes in 1.2 is that we can now, as Forgeguards, hold two-handed weapons with our shields. And in this case, we're going to be using Dreamthorn, which is going to provide us a guaranteed slam for critical strike chance, and then if we can get it, a critical strike multiplier. And then we're going to benefit from really none of the flat stats, so none of the plus 30 melee damage doesn't matter, the plus 40 void melee damage doesn't matter. We're not utilizing either of those, but we are going to take a lot of advantage of the plus 40% void penetration as more damage, and then we're going to take the extra 20% of block chance, which, as you can see, is helping us push our block chance over that 100% mark. But that's also going to be converted into more damage, which we'll again talk about just in a moment. We also gain a ton of life on this, so guaranteed anywhere from 20 to 40 health on block, and with 100% block chance, that's just going to be constant regen. So as we block, we're just going to get healed, and that's just going to be a consistent way to heal very quickly. And then block effectiveness, we're actually going to convert to critical strike multi, which is going to also be a huge bonus for us. So great weapon. Another big benefit of Dreamthorn is it's really low level, so it's level 15. You can get them early, and you're going to find this out about all of our legendaries. And why I put 2 LP slams on them is they're common, and they can easily get 2 LP. So you'll see down there 1 in 14 for a 2 LP. This one is 1 in 20 for 2 LP. Our Thorn Slinger is 1 in 12 for 2 LP. The only one that's a little bit higher is obviously Transient Rest, which is 1 in 74. That's going to be a long-term goal to hopefully get obviously the hybrid health. But these 3 legendaries are super common and super easy to get 2 LP, so it's okay to actually look at this as 2 LP slams here, rather than just saying like, oh, this is like a dream attempt to get these 2 LP slams. This is actually going to be rather easy to do. It's going to be much harder, obviously, finding the T7 rolls to guarantee on the slams with the side affixes like the increased health or the multi, and just getting lucky, but you should be able to find a lot of these and actually get a lot of the 2 LPs, especially with the new Weaver tree system. They should be popping up like candy. So we're going to be using, obviously, Thorn Slinger I just showed you. I'm going to be using that for the throwing attack speed and the extra movement speed. This is just a really basic belt that just gives us more damage. Transient Rest we're going to use for movement speed and for resistances. It's just really good for both of those things. I think it's honestly one of the best boots in the game. Up here on the helmet, we're going to get +4 to shield throw, and then more critical strike chance. Armor and health would be the perfect rolls. Here we're going to get throwing damage, critical strike chance, health, and then on our chest piece we're going to do increased throwing critical strike chance, increased critical strike chance with shield throw. That's dual stacking so that we can get to 100% critical strike chance. Then we're going to do increased health, and then armor and reduced damage taken by critical strikes. Just with this chest piece and this helmet, you will achieve the necessary defensive layers for bonus reduction from critical strike chance, which again makes us super tanky. And then for the gloves, throwing critical strike or throwing attack speed is obviously huge, then throwing damage, health, and then block chance and block effectiveness. Both rings, critical strike chance, throwing attack speed, throwing damage, and minus mana cost to throwing skills, block chance, and then cold res. Throwing attack, throwing damage, minus reduction to mana for throwing skills, block chance, and then poison res for this one. Then we're also going to do obviously a Code of Erase Sentinel. It's still the best relic in the game. It just is. So we're going to hope for a T7 throwing damage. A T6 Symbols of Hope would be peak, void res, and then health. That would be a perfectly rolled Code of Erase Sentinel. For our idol slots, this is really important. We need a large Rye idol, which is going to convert our shield throw base damage to void. So we need this on at least one idol so that our shield throw conversion gets converted to void, and then chance to shred armor on throw, and then chance to apply time rot on hit with void skill since we're doing a void conversion, and then increase to void damage, and then a critical strike chance increase, and then critical strike multi. Then we want 3 chance to cast Smite on hit with throwing attacks so that we have a 75% chance if you get max rolls, you have a 75% chance to cast Smite on throwing attacks up to 10 times per 2 seconds. Block effectiveness as our secondary because again block effectiveness is going to be converted into critical strike multi. Armor increase, and then this is new, 3% armor mitigation applies to damage over time. That's going to make us super tanky, ungodly tanky. Then increased throwing damage, and that's going to be duplicated on all 3 of these. So all 3 are the same rolls, you just want the 3 duplicates. We want stun avoidance and cold res, stun avoidance and cold res, stun chance and void damage, and then here increased health and cold res. So that's going to make up our idle slots. You'll see here, this is on max. I'm leaving it on max so that it doesn't mess up the skills when we get to them. But you can see here what we're looking at max luck. On average, you're probably going to be around 90 for all of these. And then we're going to talk about how it's not really 90. It's actually a little bit less than that, but you really don't have to worry too much because you're going to be capped out on armor and you're going to be capped out on block mitigation because there is so much of this coming from other areas. You're going to be ungodly tanky. So for blessings, we're going to be using chance to shred void res. We're going to be using lightning resistance, all res, block chance, block effectiveness, and armor. And we're going to be converting this to damage. Our skills, we're going to be using Smite, Healing Hands, Symbols of Hope, they've changed the name, Rings of Shields, and Shield Throw. Let's look at the stats of what we're pumping out here, and then we'll get into the breakdown. We're going to have around 100% on average, but 106% on the top of throwing attack speed. We're going to have capped 100% critical strike chance on our throwing skills, and we're going to have near cap on our spell critical chance. When it comes for our smites, when smite goes off, it's going to probably have around an 80% crit chance, where our throwing attacks will have 100% crit chance. Crit multi is going to be around 300%. Our additive throwing damage is 181. It's actually a lot higher than this, and we'll go over that in just a second. We're also going to have plus 66 flat void damage added on for our throwing damage and plus 42 for our smites. And then we're going to have additional additive damage of 263% and 214% on those. We're going to have 132% bleed chance on our shields and 132% on our smites, both of those with a bleed damage of around 119. We're going to also have ignite chance on both, and we're going to have time rot, which I forget where that is in here. We're also going to have 174% armor shred chance because our hit damage is going to matter, and it's going to be a big factor. Oh, here you go. This actually has some time rot procs with Smite, but it's not showing up here on paper. I'll go over that when we get to it. And then for our defenses are insane. So we have minus 10% damage taken, minus 10, this is actually minus 30%. The new affixes are not applying on the defensive sheet, so this 3% of your armor mitigation applies to your damage over time. Our armor mitigation will be capped at 85, which is about a 7 to 9% additional increase, I think it is, for our damage over time mitigation. So this will actually get bumped up to minus 30%. We're going to get another 10% reduction from nearby enemies. And again, both of our block effectiveness and armor will be capped out once everything is working in game, which means this effective HP on hit should actually be closer to 40, possibly even higher than 40,000, both for one shots and for damage over time. This will probably be closer to 15,000, and this will be again probably over that 40,000 mark. So even though you see 2,772 down here, we're looking at well into the 40s, maybe even 50,000 range for our effective HP. There's nothing too crazy over on this other side. All right, so how is this all working? Well, let's look at our skills. Shield throw is the main skill. We're gonna have 28 points at max. This is why I'm leaving it on max so you can see all 28 points. and we're going to be using the new Shield Barrage single node where we don't have a cooldown and we can just use our throwing attack speed to just pump out shield throws. So we're going to be throwing our shield as fast as we can. We're going to be roughly throwing about 3 per second, but that 3 per second is going to have 6 ricochets as we throw. So every time we throw one shield, it's actually throwing 6 shields essentially, and then we're going to do 3 of those per second, which is going to be about 18 shields per second, which all of those shields are then going to proc, or will have a chance if we have max rolls. They're all going to have 75% chance to proc a smite. Smite's going to have a chance to proc itself twice. It's just, there's a nutty amount of stuff that's going to be happening. So we're going to be doing attack speed and projectile speed. Then we're going to have those additional ricochets. Now you'll notice we have +6 mana cost for these 2 ricochets, which gets counteracted by the -6 here, but we still have 6 mana cost here for the base. So if we added this, we would have 12 -6 brings us back to 6, but that's why we have the minus mana cost on our rings, so that we can negate that and put shield throw back to 0 mana, and we can be pumping these out without worrying about consuming our mana cost. So that's why that exists the way it does. And then we're going to obviously take 1 point in Steel Defender because we're using Ring of Shields to ricochet off the shields because they count as allies because they have the minion tag. So we throw the shield, it bounces off our Ring of Shields in between bosses or enemies, and again, if we do it really quickly and we stand close enough to the boss, we should get a ton of ricochets against the boss as we just stand there and pump him full of shield throws, which is on top of that just going to be casting Smite on the boss, stacking up all of our debuffs, and obviously doing our direct damage. We're going to take Vampiric Steel so that we have some health leech from this as well, but also reduction to the armor of whatever we're hitting. We're taking Fleet of Foot so that we can add more block chance, which adds more damage, and then we're going to grab Herman's Technique for the extra 2 ricochets. But here's where the damage is going to kind of pop off. So Shield Throw deals additional hit damage. It's more damage, so it's multiplicative with other modifiers equal to a portion of your block chance. This is why we're going over 100% block chance. And then we're going to even push that further with Rygar's Fury. This is why our resistances are going to actually be reduced. So when we are shield throwing constantly, all of our resistances are going to take a -20% hit. So over capping our resistances will actually bring us back to the cap. Most of them will still be at the 75% cap. Some of them will be a little bit under, around 70% instead of 75%, but we're so tanky that won't really be that detrimental. In return, we're going to gain additional more damage by additional 100% of our block chance. This stacks with spike plates for a total of 150% of your block chance as more hit damage. So this is a massive double node here when it comes to damage. So when we look at, we're actually going to be about 150%. So it's going to be 150% of this 150%, which is a ton of multiply damage for our shield throw. Then we're going to grab the base critical chance so that we can get it to 100% crit. And then we're going to have the conversion where block effectiveness converts to critical strike multi. So the more block effectiveness we have, the more critical strike multi we have, and that's why this critical strike multi here isn't the true number, because as we proc our Ring of Shields, all of those shields are going to give us more block effectiveness, and this number for our critical strike multiplier is going to drastically increase. It's probably going to be closer to about 350%, possibly 400% when all of our block effectiveness skills kind of come online. This number will skyrocket quite a bit. Then we're going to take Healing Hands for our traversal skill. So we're going to convert this into a traversal skill and make us immune while we're moving so that we can move without taking damage. Then we're going to have additional healing per second and an additional upfront heal. So when we use it, we're just going to get a nice little pop of a heal. We're going to have more area and minus mana cost and minus mana cost so that our traversal skill doesn't cost any mana. So Shield Throw doesn't cost any mana, Healing Hands doesn't cost any mana. And then again, I just threw Divine Catalyst because there's really no other better option. This is literally just going to be used as our movement skill that just gives us a nice little pop of healing as we move around. Symbols of Hope, it used to be called Sigils of Hope. Symbols of Hope is a massive skill for us. That's why we're investing 24 points into to it. We're going to grab the extra symbols on both sides of the tree so that we get 5 of them. Then we're going to grab the increased cooldown recovery speed and then the extra block chance and block effectiveness. Then we're going to take increased damage granted. There's 5 of them, but this will actually be 100%. Then we're going to convert it to fire damage, and then we're going to convert it to void damage because we are playing a void based character. And then we're going to get the crit chance node so that we guarantee 100% crit and we push our smites up towards that 100% crit. So as these are always active around us, we have 5 sigils that are floating around with us, then we gain the extra critical strike chance both on our smites and on our shield throw to push us over that 100% mark. Sigils of Hope has been changed. They now cast themselves automatically. Pushing the Sigil of Hope button will give you a shield, a defensive layer. We will never be pushing this button. We're just going to let them pop up every 2 seconds. It's just going to summon a new one, and we're going to keep those 5 sigils up 100% of the time. So that's our goal. We never want to be without all 5 of our sigils. So this is just going to be a passive bonus of all of these different things. A passive bonus to our block effectiveness and our block chance, our crit, our damage. So literally don't ever touch this button. You may not even need to put it on your bar, to be truthfully honest. So don't touch it. Just let the symbols, skirt around you and give you all the extra benefits. Ring of Shields is going to operate exactly the same as Symbols of Hope. We're never going to touch this button outside of turning it on, or if it ever falls off, re-engaging it so that it comes back on. It's going to have 2 additional shields. We're going to have the plus 40% health on them, duration increase, and then damage reflected. So when things hit it, 10% of the damage gets reflected back. Then we're going to have slow retaliation and push enemies away. We're playing a ranged character, so we're throwing shields. We don't really want enemies near us. We don't want to be getting hit by enemies, so it's fine for them to be pushed away. Unlike if you were playing a melee character, this would be really annoying. For us, it's not. We don't really want enemies getting close to us. Ring of Shields costs less mana, and then obviously the big one. You have additional chance to block, higher block effectiveness when if you have cast Ring of Shields recently in the last 4 seconds. This gives us an extra 15% of block chance and an extra 150 block effectiveness. So that 124% you see on the sheet will get increased by another 15%, pushing it up to that 140, which, as I explained before, is more hit damage. So it adds to our multiplicative hit damage having Ring of Shields up. So we just need to be sure that we are casting this once every 4 seconds. And again, just if it falls down, just push the button, you get more damage. It's like an on tap extra damage button. And then when shields die, you get healed for 50. This is actually huge because we're not really stacking any minion defenses here, so these aren't going to be super tanky shields. They're probably going to have roughly around, I would assume, 125 HP. They're not going to be these immortal shields. So as they obviously take hits, as we get higher in corruption and they die, then they proc us with a heal. We re-engage them every 4 seconds, and then obviously we just keep doing that over and over again, and each time a shield dies, we get more health in return. So it's a nice little healing tool. Smite. Probably the easiest smite tree I've ever created. It literally just follows one path, and it's every node on this path. So we're going to grab double cast chance into sacrifice to get the 250% more damage for smite, followed by reducing the sacrifice cost so that it doesn't actually eat our health when we use it, into critical strike chance, doing more damage. So this is actually crit multi for smite on top of the 285%. So this will actually bring it to 385%. Again, you're seeing where all the multiplicatives are coming from. And then we are going to improve smite's base critical strike chance by plus 6%. And then of course the big one is we're going to convert it to void. So we're going to change it to void so that it takes advantage of our dream thorns plus 40% more multi, and then obviously all the other benefits that we're doing with void damage. So it's a void based build. It will not heal us, so we're not relying on heals from smite. It is just going to be a void conversion. Now you'll also note that ignite chance is being converted to time rot chance. This is why I was saying that you're not seeing it on the paper, but we do actually have time rot chance from our passives because we are picking up the node that has to bleed in the ignite chance. That's going to be converted to time rot chance, so we are going to get the benefits of time rot and the void damage on time rot. So you will see that as well. Now, if you for some reason are really close to 100% crit chance and you want to sacrifice a little bit of the multi damage to pick up that extra percentage to get to 100%, then obviously you can pull a point out of here and drop it here. I would honestly, if it was me, I would just take the hit out of double cast chance or out of the more multi damage and just drop it down here. In truth, I'd probably even pull it out of the double cast chance. We're going to be doing so many smites that it's going to be insane. So it's your kind of call to play around with this just to find the sweet spot, but you can drop another point here to raise the base crit chance to get smite to 100% crit if you needed to do that. So this isn't like a hard finite choice. You can make the choice that is best fit for you and how you feel about your build wherever the build is at the time that you have it. All right, passives. So in the Sentinel tree, we're going to take 4 points in Juggernaut, 1 point in Fearless. We're doing this for the extra resistances because, again, remember, we're going to eat a negative 20% resistance when we use Shield Throw. And then we're picking up a little bit of health so that we can get to the extra block chance. So this is a free +3 block chance and +30 block effectiveness. We're going to pick up the increased damage and the stud avoidance. We're going to pick up armor and damage reduction from nearby enemies. And then we're going to pick up increased cooldown recovery speed for our movement skills, and that'll affect healing hands, and then our health. In the Forgeguard tree, we are going to grab 1 point in Battle Harden, so we get increased armor when hit by 6%. This will also go with our base passive bonuses of being a Forgeguard character, which gives us 35% physical and fire resistance. You gain a stack of Stalwart when hit. Stalwart gains 5% increased armor, lasts 10 seconds, and stacks up to 10 times, which is a 50% increase in our armor. With this as well, that adds another 6%. We're also going to grab Weapon Master so that we can get down to Peltast. We're going to grab 3 points in Peltast for 18% increased damage, and then we're going to grab Steel Aegis, which gives us +50 armor and +250% block effectiveness, which again converts over to critical strike multiplier. And then we're going to grab obviously the +3% extra block chance for more damage. Then we're going to have the additional armor for each hit you have blocked recently. That is going to stack it up to 10 times, which is another 1,200 armor, which again with the multiplicatives over here is going to guarantee that you're going to be at 85% block cap. So you're going to be super tanky. Smelter's Wrath is going to be 7 out of 10, which is going to pick up around 50% bleed chance and that 50% ignite chance, which is going to be converted to time rot chance. That is going to get doubled if a two-handed weapon, and since we are using a two-handed weapon, we will actually have 100% bleed chance and 100% time rot chance, or 98% if you want to be really finicky with the numbers. We're going to grab 1 point in Iron Reflexes to get to 1 point in increased throwing critical strike chance to again get us to that 100% critical strike chance. Then we're going to have Infinite Bulwark just to get us to Liquid Iron, which reduces our damage over time taken and increases our physical resistances. This gets doubled if you've used a potion recently, but really we're just taking this for the flat list damage taken over time. Then we're going to grab 4 points in Might for an extra little bit of strength and increased health. Then we're going to grab 1 point in Armor, Flawless Defender for armor with a shield. That's going to be another +75 armor, so that we can get to Walls of Solarum, which is going to give us less damage taken and double less damage taken if you have 50% block chance. We have well over 50% block chance, so this is actually negative 10% less damage taken. And then we're going to get 3 points in Shield Crafter so that we can have a 30% chance on block. Since we have 100% block chance, this is a true 30% chance to constantly be refreshing our Ring of Shields. Then obviously you're going to get blocked effectiveness per shield is a +60, which is more damage multi. So again, you're not seeing the full damage multi on paper because we don't have a bunch of Ring of Shields procced out on us, but you will have even more damage multi, and then you have minion health and minion armor, which is why I say the Ring of Shields are probably going to have around 120, 125 health to survive, but they should at the higher corruptions die fairly frequently, but also be revived fairly frequently so that they can constantly be healing you as well. And then we have the new node. So the node that is making all of this possible, which is Forge Master's Might. You can equip a shield alongside a two-handed axe, mace, sword, or spear. In this case, we're using Dreamthorn, which is a two-handed sword. While you have a two-handed weapon and a shield equipped, you and your minions deal less damage, you have less attack speed, but your haste grants you block chance instead of increasing increased movement speed. So in shield throw, we took the haste node to give us haste for 1 second. What that haste node is actually now doing is giving us plus 10% more block chance rather than the actual movement speed, and that plus 10% block chance is being converted into more damage. So that is why we are doing that, why we are taking that extra node. So that little haste node is doing a lot of work for us. It'll give us that benefit for 1 second so that you can constantly have it up 100% of the time when you're using shield throw. We are taking obviously a multiplicative less damage of 20% and less attack speed, which is not great, but it is what it is to make the build kind of function and work the way I've designed it to work. Okay, in Paladin, we are going to grab Defiance, which is going to be 5 out of 8, so we can pick up the bonus here. That's plus 5 in attunements and plus 15% in elemental resistances. And then Endurance Threshold per 2% uncapped elemental resistances plus 1. We're going to have a lot of overcapped resistances if you have really good gear, so we can take a little bit of advantage of this for even more sustain and more effective HP. We're also going to grab Honor, 5 out of 5 for the extra block effectiveness, which again converts to crit multi, and the extra block chance, which is more hit damage. We're going to grab 5 points in Valor for the extra endurance percent, increased healing effectiveness, and extra health. And then we're also going to grab Holy Icon, which is going to give us more healing effectiveness, our necrotic resistance, which is really important, and extra health, which is going to lead us to this node here, which is Force of Devotion, which gives us extra flat attack damage for our shields, frailty chance, and really importantly, the armor shred chance to increase our hit damage, which is, is going to get the more multi from our shield throw passive tree nodes. So we're going to grab that extra armor shred chance here as well to shred the armor of our enemies. And then obviously in shield throw, we're also stealing armor from our enemies. So we're hard reducing it by a flat amount, and we're going to shred it with armor shred as well to increase the damage that our hits are going to do. In Void, we are going to grab Abyssal Endurance for the Void res and physical res. We are going to grab the plus 12 flat Void damage. This is a global amount, so since we are converting the throwing damage to Void, we do pick up this extra plus 12, and since we converted our smites to Void, we are picking this plus 12 up for our smites as well. And then the big one, Void Waves, plus 24 throwing Void damage, which we're picking up because of the Void conversion, and then increased Void spell damage by 80%, which is going to affect our smites. So that's why we are coming over into the Void Knight tree to grab these 3 nodes here, which are going to add a ton of damage for us. So when we look at it, the way that the build is actually going to play is we are going to just throw a ton of shields. Well, we're going to turn on Ring of Shields, and our Symbols of Hope, we're going to wait for them to get 5 going all the time, and then we're going to move around with Healing Hands, and we're going to try to keep up our Ring of Shields, and then we're just going to chuck shields. That's it. And just be running around throwing shields, and those shields are going to be doing a ton of Void damage, and then that Void damage is going to proc Void Smites. Those Void Smites are proc Time Rot, they're going to proc Bleeds, they're going to proc a bunch of different debuffs, and then they're going to ricochet off of the enemies and then off of our shields for single targets. So when we're fighting bosses, we're going to get really close to the boss with our Ring of Shields active, and we're just going to chuck as many shields as possible that are going to ricochet off of our Ring of Shields back and ping pong the boss so that it can proc multiple spites, and then close to 5,000 armor before all of our armor, our stalwarts, our different stacks that are going to happen, which is going to drastically push this 63% up to 85%. We have 3,805 block effectiveness, and that's at 65%, and that's before we open our Ring of Shields and have a bunch of shields adding to the block effectiveness, which should push this up close to probably around the 75 to 85% mitigation cap here. We overcapped a lot of our resistances so that when we do take that negative 20% hit, we really don't take too much of a loss here. We're probably going to see Void res, Necrotic res, and Fire res be closer to that 70% instead of 75% cap. But again, that's going to be more than enough to be extremely tanky. We're going to have around 68% move speed, and we're going to just be doing a ton of damage. From 3 shields per second proccing multiple smites, smites proccing smites, ricocheting off of our shields, ricocheting off enemies, 6 times, and those just proccing even more smites. I think this build is going to be absolutely absurd. Obviously, it's going to take a minute to get all the different pieces, but at least the legendary pieces and getting 2 LP on them is going to be rather easy. And then, of course, when you look at the block chance as we discussed, this is going to be a huge factor to getting more hit damage. So that's what I'm aiming for with this build. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of go over it and talk about how this works. Have a good one.